Welcome to Cyber Ahead with AI, the podcast where we explore how AI is transforming cybersecurity from strategy to execution and what's really working for today's leaders. I'm your host, Parth Shah. Each episode, I sit down with founders, CISOs, and innovators who are pushing the boundaries of security and technology. Today, I'm excited to welcome Samuel Van Dalen, co-founder and managing partner of Attainable Security. Samuel helps SMBs move beyond tools to managed outcomes. Think human risk programs, Microsoft 365 hardening, and clear, productized services with transparent pricing. We're going to dive into how small teams can stand up enterprise-grade controls, why human firewall metrics matter, and how to turn a one-time assessment into durable security wins. Sam, great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Parth. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Where are you dialing in from today, Sam?
Beautiful, sunny Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, yeah?
Love it up here. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I have to start with your artificer bio. Love the RPG reference. Is that a Jacksonville thing or just your own unique spin?
Oh, no, that's just because myself and my co-founder, we're pretty hopeless D&D and RPG nerds. So everything from the logo to our About Us page, you'll find has little bits of that influence baked into it.
That's amazing. Well, Sam, I really appreciate you joining us today. For the guests, I'd love to just start with your journey. What led to this point here where you have started your company, Attainable Security?
Yeah, absolutely. The quick and easy version of that story would probably be, I've been in tech all my life. Sort of being a system administrator at a SaaS company, helping to manage the data center, the infrastructure there. And one day we got hit by ransomware. I worked, 100-hour weeks. I worked over the weekends for about a month straight, just rebuilding the infrastructure from scratch. And a couple of the things that made the attack so devastating were vulnerabilities that myself and my team were essentially trying to raise awareness for, and get approval to address. And I learned later on that, hey, we were actually doing basically like vulnerability management. We were doing all these, I learned the terminology later on, but we were basically trying to do basic cybersecurity to help harden our infrastructure. It didn't work, obviously. They weren't remediated. We got hit, spent a whole lot of time there. And I think that was the moment for me when I was like, you know what, I want to make sure this doesn't happen to somebody else, right? I want to minimize the risk of this happening to other people, because I saw it. I would walk into the office after working all night, go into the office physically to like see what we can do, keep building things up. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing like, my coworkers who are moms, dads, their people rely on them, and they might lose their jobs because of all of this. And I think that's when it kind of clicked for me. Someone like Target gets hit with a massive cyber attack. Millions of dollars are paid out in fees and penalties and ransoms. Half of America has their payment information leaked, right? And the entirety of the C-suite at Target they kind of look at each other and go, dang, that sucked. I'll see you again tomorrow, right? Meanwhile, when you're at a smaller business, this was a business with no more than 40, 50 employees. When you're in a smaller business, a big cyber attack like that means that people don't get to feed their families. That means that someone's dream, something that they've been building for the last 20 years, this business, might shut down. So I made my transition into cybersecurity. And last year, my business partner and I kind of like refined our vision a little bit and said, hey, this is something we want to do. We want to make great cybersecurity accessible to those small and medium businesses. The top of the industry, those billion-dollar organizations, they're covered. They have a Bank of America, for example, has an unlimited cybersecurity budget. They don't have a limitation on that line item, right? Man, those huge organizations can afford to do that. But, a company with 20 employees or nonprofits that are just trying to make things work, a cyber attack against them relative to their size, relative to their capabilities is so much more devastating. So that's kind of the vision that we had and kind of what we realized we wanted to lead in there and help make a difference.
I love that you have so much clarity on your why and your vision. And I think that, a lot of great companies start there. A lot of companies actually focus on the how, but I love that, you focused on the why. And so tell us a little bit more about what is Attainable Security?
Yeah, sure. So Attainable Security at our core, I think the closest thing that you will find to Attainable Security is managed provider, right? Managed services provider for IT services, or managed security services provider, MSSP, right? For cybersecurity stuff. We're basically a different flavor of that What we like to call ourselves is HSP. So let's, we want to add a little more confusion into that pot, right? As a holistic security partner, we've worked, we have a lot of experience working internal IT, internal and specifically internal cybersecurity, internal infosec for various companies. And there's just this very big difference between working internally in an organization and being able to provide help to an organization as an internal employee. And, my experience as, for example, a tech at an MSP, right? Um, there's always this little bit of a feeling of a divide, and there's almost always this disconnect that you'll get, especially when an organization has both an MSP and an MSSP, right? They'll do identity management through the MSP, they'll do, let's say, device management, break fix through the MSP, but then they'll do like managed detection and response. They'll give that to the MSSP, even though, let's say, think of a theoretical organization here, a 365 stack, right? They're on Office 365. The MSP is the one that has access to all the identity management, access to the email settings and all that stuff. The MSSP oftentimes is the one that has the security expertise to help harden that infrastructure. MSPs and MSSPs, they tend to have these lines drawn, and they don't cross those lines all that often. What that means, what that ends up for the customer, for the client, is they have two organizations that both don't do everything that they can do to help to help set the groundwork for the company's success, to help secure them, right? And MSSP might have the expertise to say, hey, we should probably look towards hardening these things. So you guys are on 365. Okay, that means that you guys are on Intune. And with Intune, let's go ahead and configure a couple of these security policies. They don't really get into that because that's the MSP's job. The MSP doesn't do that because MSP's number one priority oftentimes is to keep things running, to make them run smoothly, not necessarily to run securely, right? And that's not a knock on MSPs; that's their job. So what we realized is there tends to be this little bit of a disconnect between those two, cybersecurity and IT. And I think the big thing that we settled on, the sort of battle cry that we settled on, is strong cybersecurity is built on top of strong IT. It's not built like regardless of whatever's going on the IT stack. So for us, what that meant was to offer not just security services or just IT services. If somebody needs just those, then sure, we'll do that, right? But our preferred way to operate with organizations, our preferred way to partner with them, is to basically just take over the entire thing. And that way we have visibility into everything. We're able to make security recommendations based off of their IT posture, right? Or their current IT positioning, or vice versa. We're able to find solution on their IT side of things that comply with cybersecurity requirements that they might have, right? Based off whatever regulatory compliance framework they might be beholden to. So yeah, we just found that things play nicer when one person is looking at everything, or when one organization has access to everything. And I think the best feedback that we've received is, the other day when we were talking with one of our customers, we got feedback that they literally said, hey, some of us learned after the fact, like we've been working with this customer since like the beginning of the year. And some people came back to us and said, hey, we actually just learned that you're not our IT guys, or you're not our InfoSec guys. Like we just learned that you're third party. And, we were like, yeah, that's the point. We want you to feel like that because that's how it works best. You don't feel like, you don't feel like it's just like, oh yeah, we have our own team. And then you have the Attainable team. They're kind of like out there, and they're kind of doing their own thing, and we really only talk to them when we have to. We want to feel like we're part of the team. We want people to feel like we're part of the team, because that's when they talk to us more. That's when they work with us more. Truth be told, they have more grace with us. And yeah, so that's the solution we're really trying to solve. And that's what Attainable Security is all about.
I absolutely love that. I love that you called out the more interconnected nature. Ultimately, it's the IT infrastructure that attackers are trying to break into, right? Be it an employee's laptop, be it an online account and logging into tools and getting privilege escalation, or be it a server in the cloud. The truth is, it's IT infrastructure on the bottom, and then there's that security that you do on top. And so I love that you guys are taking the HSP, the holistic service provider angle, and also love that your customers love you. They can't even tell that you're a third party. That's no better
It's a
valid.
compliment.
Yeah,
It's flattering. It's humbling. I'm like, that's amazing. That means that our dream is working.
that's amazing. Well, hey, so look, I've looked at your blog, I've looked at your LinkedIn. You clearly take a very education first approach where you make it very simple for small to medium sized businesses to understand and get actionable content. I saw World Password Day, MSP contract pitfall, social engineering tips. What inspired you to take this education first approach?
Man, I don't want to go into some sort of like, childhood, supervillain origin story, but I used to work at, and this is not to rag on MSPs. I've worked at great MSPs. I've worked at not so great MSPs. I feel like, and I don't know, maybe Parth, maybe you'll resonate with some of this, but I feel like in my experience, a lot of times, the a lot of professionals in the industry, they almost like want to be perceived as these like wizards. Hey, I know best. You don't know IT. Like, I will, I'll conduct the necessary DNS cantrips to get your website up and running, right? Don't worry about it. I know how to fix it. But they tend to be very secretive with a lot of this knowledge. Like, why? It's almost like you go to your doctor and you expect to have a conversation. If, hey, I did some Googling, I looked at this thing and I'm afraid that I might have this, 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 this. What do you
Hmm.
think? And the doctor goes, you go to a doctor that says, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm the guy that knows you're paying me to fix this, so let me fix you. Let me fix your problem, right? Let me take care of you. Uh, no, I feel like the best types of interactions are those where there's this open dialogue and there's kind of this mutual effort to learn, to understand what's going on. So for me, what that translates to is, man, I want to be generous with this knowledge that I have. I don't want people to look at me or to look at Attainable Security, right? And be like, "Oh, they have a black box and all you have to do is hand over a check every month and they come in and this black box like sits in your closet and they do their job from it." It's like, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that at all. So I like to be generous. I like to be generous with the information that I have, with the knowledge that I have. I like to have open discussions. And I really do believe that, like, man, 80% of the problems that the immediate problems that we face in society could probably be resolved if we asked a few more questions, if we were just a little more inquisitive and we just took the time to learn a little more. So if someone out there is trying to do that, is trying to learn a little more about security, do a little bit better than they're currently doing, I hope if they run into what I have to say, that they're made a little better for it. They're able to hold on to it. So I believe in being very, very generous with what you know, and just providing that value right off the rip, without trying to be like reciprocal, quid pro quo. It's like, hey, this is going to make people safer. That's the world that I live in, and I want to try and make them a little safer if I can. So I'm going to be generous with that.
I love that. I absolutely love that because I mean, I truly believe the more you give, the more you get. What goes around comes around. And I love that you take that approach because that's probably why a lot of your customers, even the ones that I saw on your website, Blockit, Smarter Commerce, Hover Around, they have nothing but great things to say about you.
Yeah.
And so, any stories you might want to highlight from any of those or any of your favorite customers?
Oh man. Let me see. Honestly, I don't want to single out any one of our customers right now, just because I was talking with, Martin's my business partner. We were talking about it on Friday, and we're like, man, this is a good Friday. It's like, yeah, because we have good customers. Yeah, I mean, I could say a bunch of great things. We have, um, at Jake and Sean over at Blockit are just awesome dudes, awesome guys. The team over at, another one of our customers, Morrow, Justin, Russ, Luke over there are super, super awesome. If I were to say a cool story about it, I'd say if you're in the McKinney area in Texas, one of the companies that we've partnered with, I think is on a very noble mission, Common Good Medical. They're basically offering, great healthcare solutions and options to underprivileged communities in the area. And I think of our customers, I think of people like that, people like Steve and Andrea over at Common Good, where, man, they're just doing such an awesome, noble mission. And like, I'm here, like, no, I'm not a healthcare professional, but in some way that we're able to bless them and we're able to support their mission in helping make their communities a little better, a little safer, a little healthier. So yeah, I guess shout out to Common Good.
That's awesome, man. Testament to the good work that you guys are doing in Attainable Security. So, looking at your website too, your site makes it super easy for small to medium sized businesses to see exactly what they're getting, right? Productized services, transparent pricing, and just strong stats.
Yeah.
Was that clarity a deliberate move to stand out in the market?
Yes, 100%. We're actually in the process of redoing the website so that we can be even more clear. We partnered with one of the customers that we work with, Kairos Digital. We're working with them to revamp the website. Yeah, 100%. We have a public facing document that we'll send to prospects that outlines every single tool that we use. We do not white label. We don't believe in white labeling because if you see a tool out there that's doing an amazing job, why would you want to cover it up? Right. So everything that we do, like, hey, you go to our human risk management platform, it's USecure. We don't hide that URL. It's usecure.io. They do great work. It's a great platform. The tooling that we use for identity management is Jump Cloud. We don't hide that. So yes, it's absolutely a deliberate choice to be, again, as transparent as possible. And I think it comes back to that thing that I mentioned earlier. Like, I don't believe in black boxes. I don't believe in mysterious processes. This is what we do. These are the tools that we provide. We stand by them because every tool that we advertise, we use ourselves, right? We love Jump Cloud because we use Jump Cloud. We like Signet because we use Signet internally, right? So yeah, it's 100% deliberate, and that's really just because we want to challenge not just our customers to say, hey, look, like, we challenge you to find someone who's going to be as honest and as transparent as us, and who's going to be as vested in your success as we will be. But I think part of it for me too is growing up in the industry. Um, I feel like it's also a challenge to competitors, right? Hey, why don't you try being a little more honest, right? Try being a little more transparent with the tools that you use, the pricing that you offer, the solutions that you implement. So yeah, I think it's to our customers, it's to say, look how transparent we are. We want you to see what it is. Like, we want you to look at the machine that we built, because we're proud of it and because we believe that it's awesome. And for our competitors, if you
Like
believe in
keeping
black
up with
boxes,
us.
yeah, exactly. If you believe in a black box solution, why? Why make money off of an obfuscated and hidden business model? Yep. Yes, deliberate.
Very good. I love that. And I love how your core values really, no matter what you guys are doing, be it your blog and your LinkedIn, your website, your core values show. And I think, that's probably something customers love about you. And, looking at the industry, these small to medium sized businesses, they face so many challenges, right? Phishing, identity basics, tight budgets. What's the biggest security blind spot you see when new clients come in?
I think the biggest blind spot that I would notice with prospects when we engage in conversations, the overwhelming amount of conversations we start with can be boiled down to basically two different approaches. One is, we feel like we're fine. We haven't been attacked yet, so we're fine, right? We're okay. Like, we're too small, something along those lines, right? Some sort of objection that basically boils down to, I feel like we've gotten lucky, so we're going to keep getting lucky. I think that's the biggest one right there. Like, when you have that mentality or that mindset, it's like, listen, I mean, we all pray that we don't get into car accidents, but every single driver, at least here in the state of Florida, every single driver is legally required to have insurance. And that's for a very good reason.
That's a very good
Because you
analogy.
do not know, yeah, you don't know what's going to happen out there, right? So that's the big challenge that we'll run into sometimes. And then sometimes we run into one or two organizations, and those are the ones that we get really excited to work with. We jump on a call, we see what's going on, we start talking, and they go, yeah, we know that we don't know everything. And so we're looking for a little bit of help. We're looking for some guidance in this. And to those organizations, those are the ones that we love to work with because, I think one sort of a guiding light, a North Star when selecting and choosing who to work with that my partner and I set out is that we really want to work with companies that want to work with us, right? Organizations that want to work with us. We don't want to like have to drag people kicking and screaming. We're not like we could if we even wanted to, right? But like, we don't want to, take this approach. We don't want to like fearmonger and be like, oh, like all this stuff, you could be next. We want to work with people that want to work with us. And so when we encounter organizations that have that first approach, the approach of, hey, we've been fine, so we feel like we're good. It can oftentimes be a big challenge to get them to help educate them because that's really what it is at the end of the day. It's an educational gap. Educate them. Actually, listen, I know that you're only 30 employees, but that just means that if you get hit, you're shut down. You're dead. There's a 60% chance that if you get hit, if you're a 30 employee organization, there's a 60% chance that you'll close down within 6 months of getting hit with a cyber attack. And if you survive, there's a 68% chance that you'll get hit again. So there's always this educational gap that we try to address when people open up with those, I guess, objections, those pushbacks. We feel like we're fine. We're like, are you really though? I don't think so. That's why we're trying to help you.
And then how do you overcome that objection? when someone just doesn't know? How do you go about educating them and, helping them actually get that outcome that they think they have, but they actually need?
So we we work with adults, and that means that they make their own choices. We'll educate them. We'll say, hey, well, listen, at least let us take a look at one or two quick things for you of the house to help you guys out. Let's take a look. Or hey, here's some materials that might help you out. Or, I'll throw out statistics like the ones that I just mentioned. But at least give us a shot to try and change your mind. Give us an opportunity to educate you a little bit. That's what we usually try to lean on to be able to educate, maybe in telling stories sometimes. Have you heard of the adage? Stories sell, facts tell. And that's what we try to do. One of the customers that two of our customers have in the past faced cybersecurity breaches of different types. And like, obviously when they're, like, hey, these people, like, it can happen to anybody. It can happen to you. So telling stories like that, trying to raise awareness, I think the biggest thing is just education. Again, going back to like a car example, like you don't need to know how exactly an engine runs to be able to know that there are a lot of moving parts and something can and very often does go wrong with this. And I'm glad I have access to a mechanic, or I want to make sure that I have access to a mechanic to fix these kinds of problems, or to take care of the car so that it never pops up. We try to frame ourselves the same way, like, hey, you ask all the questions you want. We're here. We want to educate you as much as possible. But at the end of the day, you need to want to work with us. You need to recognize, hey, this is something that I should make a priority. I'm going to make it a priority. I'm going to talk to Attainable and see what it would take to get my organization to a better security posture.
Thanks for sharing that. And like in these scenarios, right? Is it typically the budget owner or the technical champion that tends to stall these conversations?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of the organizations that we talk to, sometimes they're too small to have a clearly delineated difference between the two. So oftentimes we're just talking to the owner, right? We're
Mhm.
just talking like directly to an owner, or sometimes they don't have a dedicated IT team or IT professional, but what they do have is Bob. He knows enough about IT to keep things running. And so Bob just kind of takes over IT, right? Like they don't have an IT guy. They just have a guy that knows a little bit of IT. And then all of a sudden, hey, that's the system administrator and the network architect and the GRC specialist and the incident response, guy and the documentation dude, right?
Yeah, let me
And you
know
start
where I can find those unicorns because I'm hiring.
I know, right? I'll send them your way. I'll send them your way. But yeah, they're kind of like these positions are forced on them. So those are the types of people that we'll start conversations with oftentimes, either just directly the owner or that. But whenever we're not talking to those for organizations that are a little bit larger than that, I'm going to say 50 plus. That's kind of when you start seeing like departments shape out. And for those, we'll probably just start with the conversations with like, yeah, something, either some operations like the COO or the CFO, some kind of like operations or finance head, because that's usually under where what security would traditionally fall into if you don't have something like a CISO or a CTO.
Got it. That's really helpful. Thank you for sharing. And so,
Yeah.
with all the prospects and customers that you work with, you mentioned how some of them have MSSPs, some of them have MSSPs as well, managed service provider, managed security service providers. And so, do you replace, augment, or resell alongside them? And how do you position yourselves being more of the holistic, full stack type provider?
Yeah, for sure. When an organization has an existing MSP or MSSP relationship, our desire is to do what's best for the customer. If you are happy with them and you're comfortable with them, sometimes attempting to rock the boat just to land a contract is not in that organization's best interests, right? You can do a little more harm than good that way. And hey, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. You know who we are. We know who you are. We'll just keep in touch. And if the winds change, you know where to find us, right? We'll follow up with you or whatever. Sometimes what we'll do as well is we'll come up alongside, let's say, an internal IT resource. We'll augment their capabilities, right? And what that means is you'll have Bob, the IT guy, or you'll have a dedicated IT team, and they're great at help desk, right? They're great at general operations and infrastructure, but they're struggling a lot with cybersecurity. They do not know they don't know where to start there, right? And that's fair enough. They're not cybersecurity experts. So we come up alongside them. We basically kind of like staple ourselves into their team and then we take over a certain element of the business. So yeah, we'll either do that. Sometimes for one customer that we have, we just straight up replace them. They had an MSP, weren't happy with the MSP. We said, hey, we can probably do a better job than they are. They went with us, and like we just did a complete replacement. So we'll work along those different situations, right? We'll navigate through them. Again, the big guiding light is what's best for the customer. If they have an MSP that's absolutely trashing them, and I'm talking about like, hey, an outage that should have lasted 2 hours or a day or two lasted 2 months, and that's a real story that we ran into with once with an organization. Okay, hey, then we'll have those conversations. That if your MSP is doing those kinds of outages and that's okay with them, they're probably not working in your best interests. But yeah, usually for smaller organizations, oftentimes they'll have nothing, right? And we come in and we do that full stack, like you mentioned, which I think that's our ideal. Not because we don't like working with other people. When we find great resources, I mean, I'm like you, Parth. I'm always looking for the good ones because I want them, right? I want to like bring them here. Come, please, grow with us instead. Yeah, we like working with those great IT type teams, but a lot of times those organizations, even if we're doing a full replacement, they come with a lot of technical debt, right? They have these setups that I don't know why they did that. I don't know why you would set up like enterprise hardware in someone's home office just to be able to set up a VPN when there are much easier ways to configure a VPN instead of setting up expensive licensed hardware in in their house. Like, I don't know why you did that. Well, that's a problem we have to solve now. I don't know why you bought all of these licenses when you didn't even use them, right? So it's a lot of times they'll come with technical debt. So we like working, like taking over everything, especially with smaller organizations, because there really isn't a whole lot of technical debt. We're able to just step in and say, cool, instead of let's fix the weird things that other people did. And then once those are fixed, start moving you towards a better position. We just start moving you forwards right away. And that's kind of what we really like to do. So yeah, for smaller organizations, that means deploying Ninja RMM for Ninja One for, remote support, basic automation, ticketing systems so that they can have somewhere to get help. We get Blue Mirror in there, which is a SIEM solution that we plug into their tenant as well. Cynet comes with this cloud security posture management, managed endpoint, a managed detection and response solution as well. We plug them into a human, risk management platform, uSecure. So we like working with organizations that have nothing because we basically get to bring all of the toys that we like to play with, and we get to unpack them and use them and help push them into a better position instead of, again, dealing with that technical debt of, oh, well, they kind of already have this, so we have to wait for this contract to expire. Because again, we're not going to double bill them. If you're already signed up and a 3-year contract with no before, cool. We're going to discount uSecure off of our off of our invoicing because you already have something in place. We're not going to just bill you more and then replace it if you already have something functional. But it's just something to keep track of. So
Interesting.
yeah, clean slate.
And how do you find these customers, or how do they find you? Right? Again, like there's so many people that don't know that they need to do this, especially in the age of AI. And so how are you
Yeah.
getting in front of these customers? Is it primarily through your blog as a channel, or
Yeah, so I mean, we're partnered with a pretty awesome team called Trailway Growth. Shout out Trailway Growth. Yeah, they do multi-channel outbound, so they're calling, they're emailing, they're firing up some like LinkedIn stuff as well that we're going to be taking advantage of. They're just, they're how do you call it? You're probably better at defining these things than I am, Parth, given your expertise. But they're basically like a sales team in a box. So you kind of just you open the box, you turn the key, you push the button, and then they just start kind of helping you out, right? So that's where a lot of those conversations will come from. Next week, where I'm actually flying out to Texas. This week. In 2 days, I'm flying out to Texas. That was a brain fart to participate in like a super cool big outreach like event that we're going to be doing. We're going to be driving around town, meeting companies and whatnot, asking them to be our friend. Yeah, so that's how we do it. That's where the majority of the leads come in. Eventually, we have the dream of becoming like another, I don't know, those InfoSec type of organization, if you're familiar with them. They have they have an awesome YouTube channel, the Discord, a community. Their outreach is much more poll-based. Everybody knows who they are. And just because they are as notorious and as known as they are, they attract customers to them, right? If we can get to that point, that'd be pretty cool. But for now, we'll just keep bothering people by calling them and emailing them, and then establishing credibility by LinkedIn.
Yeah, I hear you, and very familiar with that process. I work with several founders, helping them do the same thing. So
Yeah,
it works. I'll tell you that much. It does work when it works.
yeah, for sure. And it
And
is
so
working, so we're happy with that.
that's amazing. So as you scale like your productized services, you have human risk management, you have your cloud security posture assessment. Where do you hit friction? Is it process, tech, or really just client education like we talked about?
Yeah, I guess there's like a baseline friction everywhere, right? Something that we're interesting, I think one area that we're hitting friction in right now is we're taking on customers and we're growing, and that's super exciting. But that actually leaves precious little time for us internally to refine some of our processes, to implement automations and things like that, to make things faster and more efficient for us. And I think that's where we're actually encountering a surprising amount of friction. Our customers are awesome, like I said. And so a lot of times, whenever we throw out a recommendation, either two things happen, and both of which we like. Either A, they say, cool, let's do this. Or the second one, they'll say, hey, so why is this necessary? And for us, that's kind of like a ticket to nerd out, right? To be like, oh, cool, they're asking the question. I'm going to answer the question. This is why, because on October 14th, Microsoft removed Windows 10 as a support thing. It hit end of life, and now you got to update to Windows 11, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, so we'll hit some friction there. But truth be told, it's like a lot of internal processing. It's almost like the problem of abundance, right? We're growing and things are moving so quickly, and it's so exciting that someone has to stop and do all the boring things, like write up SOPs. But they matter. They're important. So
And are you guys using like AI to help automate any of these processes internally?
yeah, so we use are you familiar with ClickUp project
Hmm.
management software? So
Yes.
they have this, yeah, so ClickUp, but they have I like ClickUp. They're leaning pretty heavily into AI in what I believe to be some pretty productive ways. They have what's called ClickUp Brain, which is sort of agentic in their tenant. You can have it create tasks. You can have it like append comments, notes, emails, things like that to existing tasks, organize, move around, things like that. So sometimes that'll actually be what we use to help like summarize what's going on with a customer, or help like create tasks or build out new templates and whatnot based off of the data that we have. Like, hey, we did these things for our customers. Let's help us for customer A, help us grab this information and start the process of building out the frameworks of an SOP for this if it happens in the future, right? So yeah, definitely pretty useful there. Guys, um, I think when used well, AI is a powerful tool, and I know you're at the forefront of this. AI is a very powerful tool. I think the big stressor or the big issue I see right now is not to avoid it, because I think that's an exercise of futility, but it's really to use to help educate companies to use it responsibly and to use it effectively, right? And don't go to ChatGPT and upload your company's sensitive internal pay information and say, hey, ChatGPT, summarize this and make a report that I can send to my boss, please, on the free tier, right? Let's not do that. Um, so yeah, we enjoy it. We enjoy using AI.
That's awesome, man. And are there any new security services or features that you're exploring based on client feedback?
Yeah. So one thing that we're exploring is essentially we're kind of workshopping it internally as like a webinar, but we might build it out into something bigger if we get some good feedback on it. But basically, just a webinar on how can I use AI safely and responsibly within my organization, right? Because I think that's the big thing that a lot of people will struggle with. People who are not technical, they don't understand the difference between Grok, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. Why am I paying? Why would I pay for this? I can go to chat.openai right now and I can interact with an LLM. So what's the difference between that and like going to my my business that pays for Microsoft 365 and going to the Copilot agent in there instead? Well, there's a lot of big differences in the terms of service and how the data is safeguarded, right? So I think there's just a lot of ignorance out there right now with regards to the different AI models. Because truth be told, Parth, you and I get excited about automation and doing really cool, edgy things with AI on that front, right? But like what most people think of when they think of AI is really just ChatGPT. It's an LLM, not necessarily, hey, cool, I can use this to automate certain other processes, or I can actually use it to make some very, very, very basic decisions that would be an absolute nightmare to code if I was using, let's say, Azure's Sentinel, right? Or Microsoft Sentinel. So yeah, I think that's like the next thing that we're thinking of doing there. Educate people on AI. So be a little more generous with that.
That sounds great. You're right. There's just so much. There's more noise than ever before now with AI
Gosh,
and so
yes,
many of these AI automations running all the time.
it's a
Where
pain.
you're right, for most people, they're barely learning how to use one tool, and now there's a million different AI tools out there. And
Yeah,
how do you keep up? So if you had
yeah.
a magic wand and you could fix one thing for your clients, what would that be?
One thing for our clients. This might be in a surprising direction, but I would if I could wave my magic wand and fix one thing for our clients, it would be that nobody ever has to use Microsoft ever again. Um, this that you can find another word processor. You don't have to use Word. You don't have to use Exchange. You don't have to use Intune. You don't have to use Copilot or Planner or Teams or anything like that. And that's just purely personal preference. I do not like. I'm a Microsoft certified professional. I don't like Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't like Microsoft. So if I can wave a magic wand, I'd be like, you know what? Microsoft can
Just focus
disappear.
on
That's the
enterprise.
problem.
Leave the SMBs
Yeah,
alone.
that's it. That's it. You could bother IBM, you could be partnered with Adobe, that's all good and stuff, but I would wave my wand and just Thanos snap Microsoft out of existence. Um, Especially since I think it was in August, the CEO Samuel Van Dalen made that announcement. I was like, hey, 30% of our up to 30% of our code is like AI generated, which is like, well, one that explains a lot of the. I'm not, assuming that they don't have the extensive safeguards and the extensive like review processes necessary to make sure that AI code is good code. And it doesn't look like it is because we've been seeing an uptick in Microsoft outages and problems and, failures and issues that they're running into for all of their different offerings. So yeah, Microsoft be gone.
Be gone. I love
Be
that. That's
gone.
so funny. Awesome. Well, Sam, this has been an absolute blast. If our listeners want to learn more, see your latest security tips, where should they start?
Yeah, I mean, you can find us on LinkedIn. I'll sometimes do a little stream of consciousness post on there. You can head us up for the latest and greatest at attainablesecurity.io. If you go to our website, it's kind of under construction right now, so some things may work, some things may not. Bear with us. But if you go all the way to the bottom or you go to the LinkedIn page, you can sign up for a newsletter, which is yet another extremely nerdy thing. It's called the Dungeon Master's Guide to Digital Defense.
Love it.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so and that's where we'll post, cool things. I send out the newsletter at the end of every month, the last Friday of the month, to give people opportunities to subscribe. If you miss them, that's fine. I retroactively post the content onto our blog. But yeah, the headquarters is attainablesecurity.io.
Awesome. Love it. And on a personal note, can I borrow that artificer intro next time I'm speaking with founder groups?
100%. Go for it. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Sam. Appreciate your time. To all the listeners, thanks again for tuning into another episode with Cyber Ahead with AI.
Yeah, appreciate you.